Welcome to the Psych Gym. I'm your trainer, Vanessa Perry, a former mental health therapist turned intuitive counselor. Much like a physical gym, in this space we'll aim to target specific psychological muscles and train them to be stronger. I'm so glad you are joining this gym. Let's hit the weights. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Psych Gym. I finally kind of sound normal. Hey, finally, my body caught up with whatever's been in the air, for the most part anyway. I don't know why I have to tell you these things at the front of this, but I did, whatever. And I'm not going to edit it out because I don't edit this at all. I ain't got time for that. So anyway, welcome back to the Psych Gym, where we train the mind like a muscle. I'm your host, Vanessa, and today we're going to dive into something that's often misunderstood, but crucial for our mental and emotional health: discernment with empathy. If I'm being honest, this is a T Swift-esque episode. It's maybe an emotionally reactive episode, but it's my podcast, so I can do that. If you've ever found yourself giving too much, staying too long, or making excuses for someone because you see their pain, this episode is for you. And for me, since forever. See, like, the thing that I love about this, guys, is that even if I'm like one step ahead of you, I have something to teach you, right? Of course. And if I have tools, even if I have to use them quite often because I am still, healing my own roots, that's what's so great about it, is that I'm not that far removed that I'm just going to be up here on my high horse going, this is what you have to do. And this is how you be in total control. Like, it's not a thing. It's just not. So yeah, I deal with this stuff. And this one is a major problem for me. Still. Been working on it. I've figured out how to do it in my workspace. I've learned how to control my empathy when it comes to my clients and some other people in my life. And then there's just other parts of my life where it's really, really difficult to control. And so we're going to talk about it here, and we're going to hope that while I'm talking about it, it will sink in even deeper for me so that I will get even better at this. Again, like, it sucks and it's hard for me, but I've been working on it. So let's start like we usually do by defining the terms. Empathy is our ability to emotionally understand what somebody else is going through. It's one of the most awesome human traits, I think. It allows us to connect, nurture, and offer compassion for people. And for some of us, empathy goes a bit further, and we feel each other, we feel emotions in our bodies as if they are ours. That is being an empath, and it is different. Having both, super fun, right? I can feel for you and I can feel it, and then it goes inside my body, and then I panic and I have to fix you so that I fix me. It's super fun. Anyway, empathy without discernment being the filter that helps us see clearly what's going on, make good choices. That's usually where we get fucked up. It's where I get fucked up. It can lead us into emotional entanglement, self-abandonment, or being used by people who don't have the same depth of care for us as we do for them. Discernment is the quiet, grounded voice that says, yes, I understand them, but that does not mean I agree. Yes, I see their pain, but that doesn't mean I'm going to carry it too. Yes, I feel for them, but I can still walk away if they cannot treat me well. Discernment doesn't block your empathy, and I don't want you to think that that's what you need to do, right? Like that it's the opposite of empathy, because it's really not. Even just by definition of the word, it's not, but I think that that's what ends up happening to people, is that they'll say, oh, you don't deserve that from me. And they'll kind of like cut it off. And it's okay to feel the thing. When we're using discernment, we're trying to change our own behaviors based on what we see, right? Like from that empathy standpoint. It helps you know how deeply you need to hold this and how much to engage with somebody. So here comes the common struggle. Here's the trap, right? That emotionally intelligent people fall into. We see why someone is struggling. We see it, right? We see their trauma, their mental health, their upbringing, their current like circumstances. They'll tell us, what has happened to them. And we're like, oh my God, that's so terrible. And that understanding, though, can really sometimes make us stick around longer than we should. We might say things like, he doesn't mean to hurt me. He's just been through a lot. She doesn't know how to communicate, but I know she cares deep down. I don't know if you can see my faces through my voice. Maybe you can. They're not ready, but if I'm just patient enough, maybe they will be. And I put that one in there. That one was just for me because that's what I like to do. I like to stick around. I like to stick around and think that when they're doing it, it's going to be great. And I'm going to be right here and I'm going to be your cheerleader and it's going to be so awesome. And yeah, whatever, dude. Does this sound familiar? I know that some of you, absolutely, this sounds familiar. This is where empathy becomes a big blur. It's like a fog. It makes it harder to see things clearly. And if you couple that with someone who is expressive of their emotions or makes promises about change, man, are we ready to buckle up and ride that bull with them? I mean, that's me anyway, right? So you see what's going on. You're like, oh, I get it and everything like that. And then maybe they get it too a little bit. And they'll say, yeah, I know, I'm not ready. And I'm trying, or I'm really learning how to communicate, or I understand that I'm not a good communicator. Right. And we'll be over here going, oh, okay, you get it. So that means you're going to work on it. But discernment has to come in and say, I understand why this is happening, but I still get to choose what's best for me in each one of these situations. It's going to be different. And sometimes in different points of time, it's going to be different. On month 1 of holding on, yeah, that might feel like the right choice. That's the best for you. You're okay. But in month 4, when, you're losing your shit, that's really a good time for your discernment to come in and go, all right, I'm using empathy and that's super great. But at what point do I have to, kind of turn that off a little bit, tone it down and add me into the mix? Let me have some empathy for myself. So empathy is like a flashlight. It shows you what someone is going through. And it's really beautiful. Again, it's not something to be upset about having. We need it in this world. We need so much of it. We need everybody to have this. Because if we could really understand what other people are going through, we'll do a better job at not attacking each other, to be honest. Discernment, though, is what helps us know where to go with it, what to do next. So let's walk through a few real life examples. So the friend who trauma dumps but never asks about you, right? This is a good example. You love them, they're struggling, but every single conversation you have with them leaves you feeling drained. They don't ask you how you are. They just kind of vent, unload, and then disappear. Even if they're not disappearing physically, they're disappearing from the conversation, right? That we're very conscious of the fact that you're the supporter and they're the person needing the support on a regular basis, right? Everybody gets to trauma dump here and there. That's what, friendship can be a container for that and sometimes is very helpful for that. But we're talking about if this is happening on a consistent basis. Empathy will say they're in pain, but discernment will say this is not reciprocal, right? We want reciprocal friendships, not transactional, but reciprocal. It feels like our energy exchange is mostly even, right? This does not mean that you shut them out cold, but you can shift that relationship, set some boundaries, have a conversation, or, if none of that works, you just reduce your emotional investment in it. You can do things and to give you some examples of how to shift that relationship. Sometimes if somebody, is coming to you and going, oh, God, I just need to vent, you can literally say, I don't really have it in me today to deal with that. I'm having a rough day too, or, oh God, I only have 5 minutes. And I'm not sure that we both have time to vent in that time, right? Because you're introducing the idea that you want time to talk to, and it gives that person just that opportunity to be conscious. Now, some of us do that. We create this dynamic accidentally sometimes. I know I definitely have, my whole entire life, ever since, you know, I was elected into peer outreach in high school, I have been that person for people. And I love being that person for people. I always have. But way back then, I didn't have anything else to do with my life, right? I mean, cheerleading and peer outreach and hanging with my friends. That was kind of like what I was doing in high school. So, I had time to do that. And as an adult, and then when I had a child, it became really difficult. And that's when it started to show up within me how I had created, right? And it's me creating that dynamic in these friendships of never really letting myself exist in that space, just letting them exist in that space, because I'm not really a huge trauma dumper. I try to work through things, and then, I give a couple sentences and that's where we're at. I'm not generally seeking support in big ways. And so that creates that dynamic. And I get that and I understand that, but that's what would happen. And then when I would try to set boundaries with some of these people, it was hard for them. They didn't want to hear it. It felt very much like, oh, well, you don't care about me. And that's when, like, okay, this isn't really a reciprocal friendship. It sucks, right? It's painful, especially when you've known somebody for a long time, but you still, shift that dynamic. So that to me has looked like, just not speaking quite as much sometimes. Or, like I said, having to set out loud boundaries, saying I don't have time for that, or like, I'm struggling too. And so this is difficult. Lots of different ways to do it. I could probably do a podcast just about that. And maybe I will. So here's another one. Here's the one that sucks. Okay, this one, like, fuck this one for real, guys. But again, I put it in here because I have to hold myself accountable for having done this multiple times in my life, and I'm not going to do it anymore. The partner who's been through hell but won't heal. Seriously, ugh. You see the childhood wounds. You know why they avoid intimacy or they withdraw emotionally. You tell yourself, they just need to feel safe. I can be that safe place, and they'll grow and they'll feel loved and it'll be so beautiful. I'm the one. I'm the beacon. Right? Your empathy says, oh, they're hurting. Oh, this poor, beautiful soul. And then the discernment has to come in at some point to say, they're not choosing growth. You cannot do the healing for them, which is what you're trying to do. And again, when I make this example, I'm not saying that you do this right from the start, especially with relationships with partners. We do have to give each other grace and compassion and ability to shift things. We have to be patient enough to give them a shot. I definitely agree on that. But sometimes it goes on too long. And in a few minutes, you'll hear a little bit more about that. But, we have to be able to open our eyes. What's really happening here? If somebody is that aware of what's going on with them and they're not really doing anything, like, what are you supposed to do? Just do this forever? Some of us do it until we lose our shit. That would be what happens to me. The discernment in this case helps you accept that you can be kind and loving and supportive. You can be all those things and still walk away if someone isn't doing their work. You can still, kind of make hard lines and ultimatums and things like that and still be a kind and loving, supportive person. But you're not an enabling person anymore. And that's the difference. So another example, a little bit lighter, the coworker who, is like always the victim, right? They always have a reason why things aren't their fault. They maybe weaponize their anxiety or stress so they can avoid responsibility. And then you end up picking up their slack, right? This definitely happened before in my life too. The empathy will say, oh, they're overwhelmed. Maybe they have circumstances at home that we understand are bleeding into their work. Again, we might enable. And then the discernment has to come in that says they're creating a pattern where I'm enabling and they avoid. You can set limits without being cruel, and you can be understanding without being a doormat. And I know that this is tricky. These feel like very basic concepts that, like, oh, just do it. It's not that simple. Nothing's ever that simple. You know that I will tell you that nothing is ever that simple. But we have to work on this stuff, right? Because we get emotionally burned out if we allow ourselves to be sacrificed for the sake of something we're feeling empathetic about. Why is this so hard? Okay, why is it so hard when you're naturally empathetic? Because we were often taught, especially those of us who were raised in chaos and dysfunction, that love equals sacrifice, that being good means being needed, and that boundaries are selfish. We learn that kindness also can mean fixing. I know that I've been praised my whole life for my empathy and willingness to understand others. I don't hate that about me, or I don't hate that it's appreciated. But for sure, it created part of my persona that then attached it to my worth. And the best part, created a guilt monster for when I wasn't acting on my empathy, which of course made me susceptible to trauma bond cycles with partners. The amount of times I have heard the gaslight of, "Don't you have any empathy?" after trying to put boundaries up on someone who has destroyed me emotionally repeatedly, I've lost count. As a therapist, people seek out my empathy and safety, but too often my discernment is on a beach in Bali while I'm over here trying to help people who don't want the help and just want the safe space. Healthy empathy does not mean overextending yourself. Healthy empathy, I don't even want to say it, honors you too, right? You get to be part of the empathy. You have to feel for them, but you gotta feel for you too. and that sometimes, when you're really strong like me, I'm very strong, and I also am resilient. So even if I feel pain for a moment, I move through it a lot of times pretty easily. And that keeps me in these cycles, right? And then the only time I'll bring in empathy for me is when I lose my shit, when I'm burned out. And I realize I have to do that far sooner so that I don't burn out. So listen, y'all, you can care deeply and still say no. You can understand and still detach. You can hold space for someone's story without losing yourself in the process or losing your own story. Discernment with empathy requires emotional maturity on your end as well, right? It's not just the other person. It means that you have to ask, is this relationship reciprocal? Am I safe here? Do I feel respected? Do I feel seen and valued? If the answer is no, even with all the empathy in the world, it's okay to change things. And yeah, I know it's hard. I just told you about how guilty I feel when I do this and that I still struggle with it to this day. So I'm not here just telling you that this is easy. It's hard as fuck. It still taps me on the shoulder with people who have literally broken me because I understand why they did. Seriously. Sometimes I get a text message from the past and I think about answering it. Even though I know exactly what's going to happen, and even though I know that that person knows exactly what they did, and that they are people who have talked to me about my empathy and used it and abused it, right? It still taps me on the shoulder going, "Oh, but don't you feel bad? Look they're still reaching out to you." Come on, man, right? You got to take care of yourself. So how do we build this? Let's get into some, let's get into some action here. So we have to name the pattern and not just the pain, right? So if somebody's been hurt, that's fine. We know that, but are they hurting you, right? Because that would be a pattern. Hurt people hurt people. Yes, they've had trauma, but are they taking responsibility for their behavior and actively working on it? And I mean really working on it, not just naming it and talking about it all the time. Going to therapy or whatever to learn the roots and heal what causes the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Do you see the signs of repair, right? Because we want to see the pattern being broken. We don't want to just see the pain. We also want to ask ourselves, what is the cost of my compassion? If your empathy is costing you peace, energy, sleep, or self-worth, it's too expensive, y'all. I know it's easier said than done, because if you're like me, you sometimes thrive on the feeling of being compassionate, which is so weird sometimes when you say it out loud, especially if it comes with praise or appreciation, right? So if somebody is constantly being "Oh God, You are my safe space. Thank you so much for believing in me, or, thank you so much for not being one of the ones that abandons me, right? Like, here we go. I'm thriving on that. I'm hearing it. My words of affirmation are like, yeah, I'm doing so good. I'm helping, right? Meanwhile, it's literally just appreciation for your enabling sometimes, right? This is where discernment comes in to let us know that. We want to build the muscle of self-validation. We're not just going to ask if they're okay. We're going to ask if we're okay too, right? Like, am I okay right now? Is this making me lose my mind? Is this making me lose parts of my own self and my life because I'm focused and entrenched in this person's pain with them? Your needs cannot be second tier. Your feelings have to matter. Your mental and emotional health is yours to handle, right? We are the ones that have to do it. We can't have other people responsible for that. And then the last one, this is the hard part, right? Like, this is the one that brings the struggle. If you're me, sometimes people will call your boundaries cold or selfish. That doesn't make them true. But I've heard it so many times. Again, being a therapist makes people believe they can get away with a lot, that they can tell me that I'm not allowed to bite back or cut them off for being an unhealthy influence in my life. Right. So we just got to get comfortable with that. Some people are just going to be raging mad. They're going to call you names. They're going to say that you're cold and withholding or selfish, or that you don't have empathy, because they want something from you. They know they're knowing that they're about to lose something that has been enabling them. And of course, that's a coping mechanism to try to get it back. Right. But empathy says, I know they're hurting. And then discernment has to come in to say, but I am not going to twist myself up to soothe their discomfort, right? Like, I'm going to make myself uncomfortable too. This does not make sense, right? When we say it out loud. So here's the takeaway for today. We're going to wrap up. You can be the most empathetic person in the room and still walk away if something's not aligned. You can understand someone's pain and still choose yourself. In fact, you have to. It's your job, right? Like I said before, you can't expect someone who's all fucked up to put you first in any way. Like, hear that clear, okay? You cannot expect someone who's all fucked up to put you first in any way, right? Because if they're that twisted up, they're in their own space. Their brain is there to protect them and cannot, right? Like, the brain is, if it shuts itself off for that person, they become vulnerable. So they're not going to be able to put you in the mix in the middle of all of this, right? I know, I'm saying it to myself too, not just you. Because empathy burnout will have you begging to be seen by someone who can't even see themselves, right? I know that you know this, right? You hear that where you're like, can you see what this is doing to me? No, you're doing it to you, right? Like, what part are y'all playing in it, right? Like, when I'm like, oh, you can't put me through this. And it's like, then go, right? Don't let them put you through it. That's, part of it. Empathy without discernment is dangerous. It's like a car that's out of control. And then discernment is like the brakes and the steering, right? Like, it can really help us from crashing. So today I'm going to invite you to start practicing both of those things. You can stay soft. Like, I'm always going to be a lover girl. I always am. And I'm always going to be an empath. So I'm always going to feel that shit. But I have to keep my eyes open and stop sacrificing myself for the sake of others. Let your compassion be deep, because it's so beautiful to be a deeply compassionate person, but have boundaries and make them clear. Make them clear to yourself and make them clear to other people. That makes you strong. That keeps your self-respect intact, and it's protecting yourself. And again, we're the only ones that are in charge of that. We cannot expect other people to be our protectors and abandon their own issue. This is the truth, right? So I just want to thank you for being here today. If this episode was something that you feel connected well with you, make sure that you like it, subscribe, share it with somebody maybe who you think needs this reminder. And no, you don't have to share it with me, because I wrote it and spoke it. So none of you smart asses out there, send it to me. And as always, keep showing up for yourself, even on the hard days. It's totally worth it in the end. So until next time, Thank you for letting me be your guide today. Love y'all. Thanks for listening. To learn more about what I do and how to work with me, head to thepsychgym.com to check it out. Keep lifting, y'all. It's worth it.